the inclination alone to protect, to want to excuse that kind of behavior in and of itself is problematic, like deeply problematic. And I think at this moment, what we need to draw a line.
Yeah.
We need to be very clear about on what side we stand on. And this is not about politics. I want to be so clear, because when people hear us talking about race, they often say, oh, you're getting political. This is not about red or blue. This is not about right or left. This is about right or wrong. And we can agree to disagree about many things. Racism is not one of them. This is dead wrong. It needs to be called dead wrong, and it needs to be called dead wrong by people who don't just look like me.
Right. His peers.
Well, then I think thank you, and I hope I haven't offended by my question, because I think I really wanted to ask and be able to ask this question.
No, we should have these
offense,
conversations. We should have these conversations.
No, don't feel bad. And the fact that Mickey Guyton is standing up too, she's probably, it's not a lot.
I feel bad. Because look, what I want to say though is like, it's important to have the conversations. Where I was uncertain, I wanted to ask. And now I know, like, under no circumstance, and I feel that way, but I don't think everybody feels that way, and I wanted to ask for the voice that's not represented here. But I feel bad that I brought it up in a weird way.
No, you should.
So I'm grateful that we actually can have these amazing conversations, and thank you for being so clear and helping all of us understand, all of you. Thank you for this conversation. Powerful.
I know it's hard for you when you're put on the spot. I know, because you are genuinely a good person. And you don't like to be in any awkward situation. It's just not you. And I get it. But I thank you for having those big kahunas to do it today.
It's true.
And the courage.
If you are just tuning back in, I don't know how much of the previous IG Live you just caught, but I was being very candid about how I'm feeling, and trying to check in with all of you about how you're feeling, specifically any updates around how those conversations around racism in the workplace are going for all of you. Shared a little bit about how they're going for me, and I was looking to all of you to kind of weigh in. I feel like this is somebody says they work in D&I. God bless. I think a lot of Black people have been put in positions to play the role of D&I experts when we are not. And I did speak to that on the other IG Live. I should mention the IG Live I just did. That was like, I don't know how long. It just disappeared. It's gone. So if any of you, my phone overheated and it's gone. And that happens literally every time I do an IG Live. So it's super frustrating. But if anybody was recording that, slide into my DMs and let me know. And I don't plan to go on and on about this topic. Frankly, I'm exhausted. But I really did want to hear from you guys. I kind of shared what my headspace is, and I think to summarize, for those of you who are like, what are you talking about right now? I didn't see the other live. We were talking about sort of the state of the conversation around racism at the workplace, and whether or not folks of color, Black people, feel like your workplace, the place that you do business with, other with colleagues, like if you feel supported and if you feel like people who don't look like you are doing the work to better understand your experience in this country. And if the conversations have elevated or if they have not. And I think, unfortunately, what a lot of Black people predicted and expected and have been preparing themselves for since the uprisings over the summer, where a lot of people suddenly started speaking out about racism, because it sort of suddenly felt like the right thing to do. It felt in vogue. It felt like there was social currency in it. You know, that after that, like once they were done riding that wave, that we would go right back. And I'd like to believe that that was a real watershed moment, you know. And when I say that, I'm specifically referring to the murder of George Floyd, which led to uprisings all over this country, which led to having courageous conversations with people in our lives, which led to, you know, white people and non-Black people educating themselves about racism, reading and sharing books about anti-racism, stepping up, speaking up. You know, when I went to my first protest in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, I was so relieved to see white people. I mean, more white people than Black people, frankly, there holding up Black Lives Matter signs, chanting louder than us, putting their bodies in front of us on the front line, like getting tear gas. I've never seen that in my lifetime. And it signaled that there was a real shift happening. And I think the question in our minds has been, but how sustainable are these changes, and how sustainable was that shift? And was there a real paradigm shift, or, you know, and how far reaching, you know, are those changes, and is that sort of movement among, you know, white people and non-Black people? And I just want to encourage us all to keep these conversations going and keep the pressure on and keep your foot on the pedal, because we're not on the other side. And we are not all operating with the same set of information. We are not all operating with the same tool set. A lot of us haven't read the books, haven't done our homework. And so we come at these we arrive at these conversations at different levels. And while for a long time, the onus was placed on Black people to make up for that gap, that information and awareness gap, with our empathy and with our self-control, I think that it's time for that the onus to shift. I think it's time for paradigms to shift. And I think that we need to recognize the real emotional toll that it takes on Black people to have to constantly hold the burden of navigating these conversations with care and with responsibility, and with, you know, the intention of keeping everybody together and not losing folks along the way. That is not our job. And it probably never was, but we always felt like it was, especially if we are one of few Black people who've been navigating white spaces. We've become really good at it. We've become really, really empathetic, really diplomatic, and empathy is great, but it needs to go both ways. It needs to go both ways. And empathy in action is what these times call for. So this is not like I'm not condemning any one person. I'm not like, you know, and again, I think even the fact that I feel the need to to offer those disclaimers comes from a really unhealthy place. But our country is unhealthy. I mean, it comes from the place where I feel like in order for me to speak my truth in my authentic voice without coming up a couple octaves, without keeping a smile on my face, without really, you know, making it very digestible, that there's a fear of retaliation. There's a fear that I will be perceived as an angry Black woman, and that the things that I say will be dismissed and discounted, and that I will be punished in certain ways. And, you know, I've carried that weight for a long time. Like a lot of, like, if you feel me, tell me, because we don't talk about that enough in open forums, in mixed company, you know, in interracial, you know, group settings, and certainly not at work. And so, you know, we give a lot of coddling to folks who don't understand and who are, you know, putting themselves in the vulnerable position of asking the questions. And the reality is that we should be comforting, supporting, and honoring the people of color, the Black folks who've been silenced for too long and who are now finally using their voices. Because that's truly courageous. That's truly what's courageous, and to be applauded and comforted and supported, because we are doing it in the face of real like tangible risks and threats. And we're also doing it in spite of all we've been through and all that it brings up when we talk about it, when we go there. And I mean, there's so much to talk about with this, but somebody said, bring back Trump. Welcome to my world, because I don't think you're not one of my people, but you got here somehow, so welcome. Maybe this live is for you. Somebody said, feeling the need to put disclaimers has literally kept me from posting so many things about what I actually experience. Can ye see? Can we go live? Because when I tell you that exact feeling is why I almost didn't go live. And I have never gone live about anything like this, especially in this state where I'm not composed and I'm pissed, or not pissed, but my heart is pounding. Like, we're not allowed to be a front-facing Black person and have righteous anger or anxiety and talk about it in the midst of it. We're supposed to like wait until it subsides and we have like a perfect caption, or we never get there, and so we never find the words, and we never feel safe enough to go there. And then what the fuck? Like, that's so unfair. Where does that energy go? I have to think that turns into poison, that turns into cancer. And I don't want to carry it. I don't want to carry it anymore. And I think at this point, it's up to all of us to be carrying that. And so if I feel it, maybe some of you feel it. So I'm going to share it. I'm going to get it out. And I hope that someone out there either feels that this is cathartic, you feel like I'm speaking to your experience, or you're learning from this. But I'm not holding it in anymore. I'm not. And I hope that you, can you see? I hope that you set yourself free from that feeling that you need to make the disclaimers and put those out there before you can say anything, and those disclaimers going through your mind make you go, you know what, this isn't even worth it. I literally do that 400 times a day. That's why I've never gone live, and many of you don't even know that this is who I am. I have a lot of joy. I do. I have a lot of love in my life. I am blessed and highly favored, as my mom and aunties say. But let me tell you, this is also who I am. I also carry a lot. And when I get triggered, it comes up. And I don't know what to do with it. And just like you. And so I don't have it all together. And yes, I have my hair and my makeup done and this amazing bomb-ass outfit on, because I have an amazing Black AF glam team, and they know what they're doing. And no, I may not wash my face tonight. But that's aside from the point. The point is, I don't have it all together, and I don't have all the answers. And my job is to say the right thing. Somehow find the words that capture what people who look like you, who see themselves in you, find the words that adequately reflect them and represent them, and will make them feel seen and heard, and like do it in a way that's also going to hopefully change hearts and minds. Like, that's my job. And I am I feel grateful for that that purpose that has been placed in my path and this opportunity that I have every day, but it can be exhausting, especially if you don't reorient and also make sure that everybody understands that it's everybody's job to arrive at these conversations around race informed and equipped and like well read and well informed, and like, because we all have that responsibility. It's also not just folks with, you know, Instagram followings and television shows, you know, and big platforms. It's like, this is real, like what's happening every day, you know, in my work environment is no different than what's happening in yours. And what's happening at my dinner table is no different than what's happening at yours. Like, these are conversations that we're all having. These are feelings we're all wrestling with. And so I think the check-in is important, and it's not what do people talk about? Call out. It's not about like a call out culture. And like, I'm so over that whole conversation. Like, let's call it what it is. We need accountability, straight up. So I'm just wanting to know, how are those conversations going for you guys in your workplace, on your Zooms? Do you feel like people are getting it? Do you feel like people are doing their work? Do you feel more heard, more seen, less so? Since, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement was sort of reignited after the murder of George Floyd. I'm going to read a couple of these, and I know this is long, so if you need to go to sleep, feel free. But for those of you who want to stay and kind of talk a little bit longer, I'm going to pull this in because your auntie is blind, and we're going to talk. Anti-racism. Somebody wrote, anti-racism work is optional. You ain't never lied. And I think that therein lies the problem. It's like, if you're a good white person who's who's willing to do extra credit, you're the ones reading the anti-racist books. Guess what? It's not extra credit. It's essential. It's essential. And it actually should be required by every workplace, in every industry. That's my take. Somebody said, I got shut down today and he told me I was making a big deal when I called him out. White fragility. Somebody else said, they are stalled. Black and brown employees still have to educate. Somebody else said, I had to work through the summer and I had a sad look into how much people are not getting it. Somebody said, down here in Birmingham, Alabama, we are bold with our conversations about race at work, at home, wherever. Civil rights is our #1 topic. That's awesome. Saints Revelation. That's awesome. Maybe you can educate us about what it's looking like down there in Alabama. Lord knows y'all have a long history that requires grappling with and healing and reconciliation. What does that look like for you guys in 2021? If you want to go live, Saint Revelation, let's go live. Because I would genuinely, I know I sound like I'm being funny, but genuinely, I would really like to understand what that looks like. And maybe we can learn from you and kind of model our own curriculum that we're going to go back to our workplace at some point with. I feel heard, but I have to keep ringing the alarm as one of the few Black people at my company. Somebody else says, I feel like I missed the important part of the live. What's she talking about? Somebody fill her in. I'm so sorry. I can understand why you feel like that. We're talking about racism. We're talking about how conversations about racism are going in the workplace for you guys. I've shared my experience. I've shared where I'm at, and I'm looking to kind of hear from you guys as well. Somebody said, last February, I quit my 9-to-5 corporate America for the same exact reasons we are discussing today. I was fresh out of college and from Parsons, and it was hard going from office to pet, from the office pet to the office threat. Oof. From the office pet to the office threat. That's your book right there. That is your book title. That is your TV show. That's a whole sermon. I so feel that. I'm down to go live with you too if you want to go live. Somebody said they're going terrible. I just dropped out of a side work group centered on inclusion because they said an open forum conversation that we had last week got too political. Here's what I want to say about the too political card. And I said this already in the previous live that got unfortunately erased unless one of you guys recorded it and want to send it over. But talking about race and racism is not the same thing is not the same thing as talking about politics. Race is inherently political, but when we are talking about racism, it is not the same thing as debating different political ideas. We can agree to disagree. I said this earlier. I said this on TV today. I said this on my live earlier. I'm going to say it again. We can agree to disagree about many things. Racism isn't one of them. I will debate with you respectfully about our differences in political opinions and leanings, but I will not tolerate racism, and neither should you. And I think in this moment, it's about drawing a hard line. It is about making it clear on what side you stand on. And this is not about like red or blue or left or right. This is about right and freaking wrong. And we have to be able to agree that using the N-word as a white person or somebody who is non-black is dead wrong, point blank, period, in any context, under any circumstances. And that is the topic that we talked about today on the show that sort of led to this conversation that I'm having now with you about how these conversations around racism are going at the workplace. So hopefully for those of you who are just joining, you are sort of up to speed on like why we're talking about this. And, you know, beyond that, I think when we zoom out, the macro here is I think this is a good time for, this is like a checkpoint. This is a check-in point for all of us around these discussions around race and racism. Like in June, 8 months ago, we saw that there was this huge awakening for so many people. And suddenly so many white people were participating in conversations about race like they never had before. And the topic of systemic racism now, for the first time in my lifetime, had become a hot topic that everybody was suddenly expected to grapple with. And it was commonplace, open forum, open dialogue in mainstream conversation. And people were reading the books, the anti-racism books, and sharing resources and holding other white people accountable, white people protesting on the front lines, and, people doing the work. I'll do it with air quotes because a lot of people really weren't. They were just kind of doing performative allyship. But like, where are we now? How'd it go after you read the books? Have you been applying it? What have you learned? Are people in your life applying what they learned? Is that resulting in different kinds of conversations at home with yourself in the mirror, at work with your colleagues? Let's talk about empathy in action. What is it looking like for you guys? I have seen one too many people at my job start the conversation and then drop out because they are uncomfortable with those who disagree, and then with those who agree and then disagree. Oh, wow, we got Jonathan in the comment section. That's so funny. Dad, you're embarrassing me. I have seen too many friends and colleagues take on anti-racism work in their workplace as unpaid labor on top of their full-time roles. Pay them for their labor. That's absolutely the truth. And somebody earlier said that the anti-racism work is optional, and that's part of the problem. It shouldn't be optional, and it shouldn't be something that's relegated only to the diversity and inclusion experts. It should be something that is required. It should be required of any employed person in this era. How come? Wow, you guys are really popping off. I can't even keep up. My agency promotes global human rights, but does not stand up for human rights issues at home. Our leaders need to publicly denounce racism. I think that publicly denouncing racism is an absolute prerequisite to the work. And I think it should be easy. That's the easy part. You know what I'm saying? Publicly denouncing racism and talking about how inexcusable and intolerable and abhorrent I could go on it is to use the N-word in 2020. All this stuff is this isn't even, I don't even classify these under hard conversations. I think this is the easy stuff. You know what I'm saying? We should be able to easily agree on that. Remember that line I talked about, right and wrong? Few things are as black and white than the N-word or denouncing racism. I think that's pretty, right? Hopefully everyone here, hopefully we can agree on that part. Somebody says if talking about race makes you uncomfortable, then you should probably do more personal work before interacting with others. I agree with that. It feels personal every time the N-word is voiced. It feels like my soul hurts every time. Yes, I feel you so much. Is it real she doesn't read the comments? What are we talking about? I'm clearly reading the comments. The leadership at organizations need to set the tone. Without that support, nothing changes. And POC are always swimming upstream and waiting to be heard. It's frustrating and exhausting AF. I could not agree with you more. We cannot do this alone. We need advocates and allies, and we need them to be at the highest levels of management. And this kind of thing needs to be rolled out top down. I think that companies need to be very clear on which side they stand and what their priorities are as it relates to addressing systemic racism. And systemic racism means it's structural, meaning it is embedded into every system, every organization, every ecosystem. So whenever you hear people say, that's not our country, that behavior does not reflect our country, that behavior does not reflect our company's beliefs, that behavior does not reflect this industry's, thoughts on inclusion. Listen, if it exists in your ecosystem, it's your problem. If it exists in your ecosystem, it's your problem. And to say that it's not reflective would be missing the entire point. It's a learning opportunity when these moments happen where racism or bigotry or, racial slurs are used and that information gets out. It's a call to action moment, not just to punish and cancel that person, but to deal with the root. We gotta stop. We gotta move away from the idea or the notion that it's just one bad egg. It's just one bad egg. Because it's the same mythical train of thought that we hear when we're talking of, when people are basically saying that police brutality isn't real, that there's just a few bad apples in every bunch. Doesn't mean the whole batch is rotten. Listen, it absolutely means that the whole batch has been exposed, and it absolutely is a part of the ecosystem. It's in the air. We're all breathing it. I'm breathing it, you're breathing it. And so to say that that's not who we are, or that doesn't reflect us, you're saying that you are in denial and that you're not prepared to deal with the truth and the reality that is. So when we have white supremacists who are running up on the Capitol, when we have insurrectionists that are like taking selfies before they, like steal things out of the Capitol building and break the windows and then like go home to their family, that happened. That happened. And those people, they aren't just some like bad apples. They're reflective of a larger school of thought. And they all came from somewhere. And they're going back to there. And a lot of them have kids. They have offspring. They're spreading that poison. And just because it's not necessarily in the mainstream, like those, we only saw them pop out like that day for some of us who like can just ignore that there's been drum beats leading up to this crescendo that we all witnessed for a really long time. But let's just say it just popped out of nowhere, and like we saw these people, and like, guys, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. And it's the same when we hear one person who gets called out for using the N-word. Like, I really, really want to celebrate. And, I don't know if you guys know about the country singer who was called out today for using the N-word. But I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that the country music industry came forward and said, in response to someone else saying, that's not who we are. He's not reflective of us. He doesn't represent us. Other country music stars came forward and said, yes, he does. He does represent us. We cannot sit back and act like we have not heard that language before in our industry, or that this man hasn't used that word before. We all know he has, and we all know that this is a part of this community. And what are we going to do about it? And to me, that was like, finally, someone's calling it like it is. Someone's ready to do the work. Someone's ready to take accountability. Someone's ready to call out their peers. Folks are ready. Like, let's do it. But then you have other people, even in the wake of those comments, wanting to deny that this is even reflective, that these are just a couple bad apples. So that's my thought on that. Let's see. If anybody wants to go live, I'm open to it. If you guys think it's a good idea, don't have me looking crazy out here. Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is a bad idea? Do you think this is a good idea, or do you think this is a bad idea?